With technology, we are more connected than ever before, but recent data shows young people are less happy than they were 10 years ago. And actually, heavy social media usage is linked to lower life satisfaction and higher stress. This morning, we're hearing from Mimi Nicklin, the founder of Empathy Everywhere, the author of The Connection Prescription. Mimi, thank you so much for joining me this morning.
Oh, you're so welcome. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Give us your thoughts on digital connection and our youth.
So we had a recent report that came out from Gallup talking about the impact on social media and digital usage on youth happiness across the USA. And what that report shows is that indeed, when our young people are significantly overusing or using heavy use of social media, it is impacting their happiness. And from my point of view, the fundamental issue underlying that is an issue of connection. So not necessarily the platform per se, the social media per se, but the connection that we have between us, the way we're showing up on those platforms and how we're using them. For me, I think that deficit of empathy, of human connection, is one of the biggest problems that's plaguing our world at large.
Now, Mimi, you mentioned it depends on how we're showing up, how we're using social media. So explain that a little bit, because it would seem, on the surface, we're seeing our friends on social media. We see their life updates, their pictures. Shouldn't we feel more connection to them?
And absolutely. And I think the thing here is to know that social media is never all bad or all good. In fact, what this Gallup report showed is that light social media usage was making our young people happier than zero social media usage. So you're absolutely right that these platforms were created to connect us to each other, and often they do. But our biggest challenge is really confusing visibility with understanding. And often when we're on these platforms, we see people looking at our photos or liking, engaging with our content. And we feel that that means we're more seen in the world. But the reality is there's no understanding underneath that. So that sense of belonging, that sense of really being understood is missing. So we do have a crisis of really confusing being seen with actually being understood.
Now, because of that, some people are turning to AI to kind of feel that human connection. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we're out of practice is the biggest problem. Empathy, which is the skill set I specialize in, and I get to travel the world and meet people like you and talk about this topic. Empathy is a skill set, and it is the ability to understand the perspective of another. Now, that skill set gets better, is heightened when you practice it, like any skill. So as we become less accustomed, less practiced at speaking to our neighbors, going into the community, saying hello to a stranger, it often feels easier to sort of hide behind a screen and perhaps talk to an AI chatbot, which on occasion can fill those voids. But again, as humans, we are a pro-social species. What that means is we do better when we are together. And although AI has a very positive role to play in many occasions, it cannot replace real human connection. And as humans, we do better when we are connected to each other. So the role of AI certainly has a place, but it won't fix our connection crisis.
What are some tips to maybe practice that skill set or maybe rebuild a connection that's been damaged or severed?
I always tell people that the first step is to be aware of the problem. So many of us are lonely. In fact, in America, it's 52% of people say that they're lonely. But many people don't recognize it as loneliness until too late. So the first step is to really be aware of the connections in your life. How deep are they? How frequent are they? Do you feel understood? So that would be your first step. But the second part of this is really around being intentional about listening first. In life, the people that have the deepest relationships are the ones that learn to listen best, because as humans, we listen to those who listen to us. So in a world that is teaching so many of us to use our voices, to shout louder, to raise our voice, to post more on social media, my advice to people is to listen better. because there are no relationships in your life that won't do better when you master these empathetic skills. And I think the thing that's important to always remember is that using empathy in your community, in your workplace, or in your home isn't about agreeing with everybody or judging. It is simply about perspective taking, being able to step into the shoes of someone else and see something from their perspective. When you get that right, you can rebuild all kinds of gaps and relationships across your life.
Where can we go to learn more about you and about some of these issues?
They can find me if they search for my name, that's Mimi Nicklin on Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn, or they can find me at www.empathyeverywhere.co.
Mimi, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me.
There's more TOA next.